I try to keep you out of court, right? We're doing everything we can from a document standpoint to keep you out of court. Văn phòng của Mike á, là chuyên môn là luật lệ là thương mại với lại employment law.
What is LLC? What is INC? And each of them. Xin chào mọi người, hôm nay Trinh mời được anh Mike là một luật sư ở Huntington Beach để đến chia sẻ với mọi người. Anh Mike có hơn 23 năm kinh nghiệm trong ngành luật ở Mỹ và anh Mike làm chuyên về những cái ngành gì anh?
Chào Trinh, cảm ơn nhiều. Văn phòng của Mike á, là chuyên môn là luật lệ là thương mại với lại employment law.
Okay, it's business là thương mại và employment có nghĩa là những người về nhân sự.
Okay.
Thì xin lỗi mọi người là anh Mike không có nói được tiếng Việt nhiều, cho nên là mình cứ nói trên tiếng Anh đi cho anh comfortable. Thì có những cái từ professional rất là khó để mà dịch sang, thì cái interview này sẽ nói trên tiếng Anh cho nó dễ cho anh Mike. Rồi mình sẽ có subtitle tiếng Việt ở dưới nha.
Yeah, nếu mà Mike nói được tiếng Việt Nam thì nói tiếp, mà nếu mà không được thì đổi qua tiếng Anh.
Yeah, okay. Whatever you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Business structure is very important when you open a business. So can you please tell us a little bit of what is LLC, what is INC, and each of them?
Sure. So let me take a step back, because I have a lot of clients that they come to me, right? They're entrepreneurs. They want to start a business with a cousin, anh em, and they don't think about even the entity, right? First they think about is, well, we just want the business, and then so what I ask is, well, whether quán ăn hay là sản xuất, whatever it is, have you guys thought about what happens if there's a lawsuit? If something goes wrong, do you want your personal assets to be exposed? So that's when I asked them, have you thought about, like you said, a corporation or a limited liability company? And so the first thing we're trying to do is let them know we want to protect them. Nếu mà cái gì xảy ra đó, let's say một người khách mua đồ của mình, rồi sau đó bị nặng vô nhà thương, bây giờ cái người đó muốn thưa cái công ty của mình, right? So we want to make sure that nếu mà mình có bị thưa đó là our personal assets aren't exposed. So we separate the personal and the business. And so when we look at that, cái business á, cái bên phần business á, there's many forms we can do, but the most common one you hear is the corporation and the limited liability company. So with the corporation, a lot of people know what a share, stock share, right? You own shares of Microsoft, of Apple. I think they call it IFU. Is it the stocks?
The certificates.
Yeah, the stock certificate. So in a corporation, you have the stocks, but in a limited liability company, you have the membership units, right? That you own. So it's not really a stock, but when we think about it, it's kind of the same thing for all intents and purposes as we're starting a business. So both the corporation and the limited liability company give us corporate protection. Even though one is called a limited liability company, it's all under the corporation's law.
A lot of people think they open an LLC means limited liability company. It means they are automatically protected. But a lot of times I hear is because of the commingle and the way that they don't know how to separate it properly.
So there's a legal doctrine. Nếu mà bị thưa, something happened, we call it piercing the corporate veil. So you lose the corporate protection, right? Whether it's a corporation or a limited liability company, both. You lose it. So when I work with people and I tell them we want to set it up, không phải là mình cứ có một cái giấy tờ, like the articles of incorporation or articles of organization if it's a limited liability. It's also how you conduct the business. And like Trinh nói là if you start commingling, you lose the corporate protection. So cái chữ commingling á là hồi mà mình xài cái business expense and personal expense in the same account. Let's say mình có một cái bank account, a business checking account, mà mình xài cái nhà băng đó để mà trả tiền xe, tiền bảo hiểm, tiền đi ăn, tiền đi vacation đó, you're gonna have a problem, right? Because the way the laws look at it is there's no separation between you, the person, and the company. So there's no reason for it to have the separation of business and personal. Now you're all exposed.
So even you just make one mistake, that as long as you that exposed to that personal use.
Right. I mean, it's not like a one time. I wouldn't say like. Yes, it is a one mistake, but I won't say. Like, let's say you accidentally charge a dinner to your business credit card. It's fine, right? Okay. But if we make it a pattern.
So it's like a purpose.
Right. Okay. So if you start doing a lot, there's also other ways to lose the corporate protection. If for a corporation. If you don't follow all the corporate formality, you have to have the shareholders meeting, right? And
meeting minutes.
The meeting of the meeting minutes, exactly. You're looking at the what I call the financial health of the company, the legal health of the company, right? The best way to look at it is like it's like a doctor. You go to the doctor once a year for an annual exam. Well, the company should have an annual exam, and that's where everyone comes together. You're looking at the finances. Do we all agree on the direction of the company? Are there any concerns, any lawsuits, any risks that we want to do? Are there new projects that we want to take on? Right. So you want that company health checkup once a year, and if you're doing that, then you get to maintain that corporate protection. If you're just running a company, you never do it, you could lose the protection of being a corporation.
Is that a requirement of company meeting or meeting minutes only on LLC or INC or both?
It is, under the corporations law, it's only required for corporation, not a limited liability company. But that's not to say that I would ever tell my clients who own a limited liability company, never meet, right? That's just a bad idea, right? You want to meet with your cousin, your brother, your sister, whoever it is, once a year and say, hey, cousin, how are we doing?
It's also the meeting minutes. It's not just for formality, but also, like you say, review and have everything in writing.
Right.
Then you know what you do, and you know what you've done right, what you've done wrong, review it.
Right. And oftentimes when we don't see the corporate minutes or just type of a document showing there's a meeting, is a problem when there's a lawsuit between the cousin and the other cousin.
I said so, you said so.
Right. Yeah, I said this, you said that, exactly right. I didn't say that, I didn't agree to it, right? So when we don't have documents to show, what was agreed to, right? That makes it very difficult. The other good thing about, let's say for a corporation, or for any company that matter, right? Corporation or limited liability company, let's say you want to sell the business, right? You've done great, you're ready to sell the business. Cái người mà sắp sửa mua cái công ty của mình á, they're going to have their lawyers and their accountants and people do the due diligence. They're going to ask you, they're going to say, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? We want to know what's going on here, right? And you want to sell your business for a couple $1 million, but the lawyer for the buyer is saying, where's all the document? We don't have any.
Yeah, and that's a lot of...
Big red flag.
Yeah,
right? Big red flag. And so if you want to grow your business, you want the protections, you want to do things right, but I think in general, you want to run a good company, you should be meeting once a year at the minimum.
Besides the business plan, and you have to review and have all these meeting minutes.
Right.
So going back to the difference between LLC and INC, can you go specific, the difference, and when to choose what? Let's say I just want to open a business. Do you have a general advice, or what kind of company should I choose? And also where to form that company?
Sure. In terms of choosing between the corporation and limited liability company, I tend to just give the clients the option. I don't tell them one entity or another, but in general, the limited liability company has less formalities, right? You don't have to do the annual meeting of the minutes, okay? So for some people it works better. For some people, like, Mike, I'm the only owner of the company. I say, okay, well then set up as a limited liability company. Because one of the big differences we see between the corporation and the limited liability company is taxes. So I'm not a tax attorney, right? So I won't give tax advice on today's show. But generally, what I'm share with clients is, with corporations, C corporations, not S corporations, okay? With C corporations, there's double taxation. So you're taxed once at the corporate level, and then you're taxed again at the shareholder level. You can get around some of that by having your corporation designated as an S corp, right? So there's a bunch of rules on that as well. With limited liability companies, oftentimes if you're the only person, from a tax standpoint, you're treated as a disregarded entity. If there's multiple members of the LLC, you'd be taxed as a partnership. So there's a lot of times there's tax considerations, and I think that in general, when entrepreneurs are looking to start their company, they're more driven by tax incentives, tax motivated reasons, rather than legal. So kind of that tension between what lawyers and accountants. Lawyers are very risk adverse, right? We want to make sure you're doing it right. Prevent litigation, prevent lawsuits. Let's do it right. We don't want the audits. We don't this. The tax people have another set of interests that they have, right? And they're going to advise.
Save the most money.
Save the most money, right? And so when the client is unsure, I said, let me talk to your accountant. Let me see what is their objective. Then I'll show them what my objective. And at the end of the day, it's the client. The client has to make the decision what they want to do. Okay, so that's some of the differences. A question you were asking about, where to register.
That's because I live in California. I have a business in Texas. Should I form a company here or in Texas?
Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into where you want to register. If you're a tech startup and you're looking to sell it, go public one day, most people say Delaware, right? You hear that, incorporated Delaware, right? Incorporated Delaware. But if you're not that type of business, you're a smaller type of company. I've heard Nevada, Texas, like you said, right? Because maybe for tax reasons. But I think a general statement I can share with all that is people like Nevada or especially Delaware is that the laws are very friendly to pro management, and it's clear.
Favor the owners.
Favors the owner.
The business owners.
Yeah, favors the owner, and it's clearer. So the last thing you want to do is have a problem with your company, and then when you're in court, you're not sure how the judge is going to rule. In Delaware, it's pretty established, pretty consistent the way they rule on certain corporate issues. So you want that assurance. If something happens, I need to know that the courts are going to rule a certain way. So we reduce that uncertainty.
Okay, I have a question. If I live in California, my business in Texas, and I form a company in Delaware, if something happens, I got a lawsuit. Do I go to court in Delaware or Dallas? In Texas or in
It
California?
depends on what's the basis of the lawsuit. So, for example, let's say you make a product in Texas. Customer buys your product, customer got hurt. Well, you could be sued in any state. More than likely, you'll be sued in the state where the customer lives, right? But let's say your building is in Texas, and you have an employee. The employee got hurt, so you would get sued in Texas where that employee is. Let's say you and your business partner got into dispute, right? You're accusing or you're alleging your business partner of stealing money, right? You could sue in Delaware court or you can sue in Texas court.
But not in California, where you live, doesn't matter.
Well, because there's no connection. California. So one of the legal requirements on any lawsuit is that the court has to have jurisdiction over the case. So there has to be some type of connection or tie-in for the court, right? Otherwise, the court said, why are you in my court? Why don't you go back to Texas? Why don't you go to Delaware? Why are you in California? Well, because I live here. But there's no connection. I'd say so. So that could be a challenge in having the lawsuit in California, right? It may be kicked over to Texas or to Delaware. But again, it depends on the type of lawsuit.
But again, it sounds like it most depends on where the product or the business is. That most likely the lawsuit the court you need to go to appeal is there. So if you open a business in Delaware, you form a company and an entity in Delaware, but you do business in another state, it doesn't really protect you much. So what's the purpose?
When it comes to the management owner issues and disputes, the laws are much clearer and they're enforced more consistently in Delaware. That's what big companies
so
are.
So they
looking
just
for.
want to have an option, so they can choose Delaware or
yes, you can choose.
Operate the business.
Right,
Okay.
you can choose. But for many of my clients that I work with, I typically tend register where the company is located. One, you're reducing costs. It costs money to have a registered agent in the company. Second is, if my clients are living here in California, I typically tell them California, so just so they understand it better. But if they live here and they open in Texas, say, well, it's not a problem. But are you overseeing the business? If you're not overseeing the business, there could be problems later on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mike. If I'm a foreigner and I want to open a business in America, can I open any entity here in the U.S.?
There are some challenges depending on what type of entity you want to be. So let's say you're a Vietnam national and you come to the United States and you want to open a business. Right? You can open the corporation, a C Corp. You cannot be an S Corp because an S Corp doesn't allow for foreign nationals.
How about partnership?
Partnership, you can. Okay. The other one we were talking about is limited liability companies. Yes, you can. Remember, so if you're a Vietnam national coming here, they're going to need a tax identification number. They're going to have to apply for one because they don't have a social security number.
Oh yeah,
the
TIN
number.
TIN number.
So that has to be attached to a TIN number. The other challenges many foreign nationals will have is opening bank accounts.
Oh yes.
Right, because even if you have a federal tax ID number, EIN number, employer identification number for the business entity, the banks will also want to know, well, who's the beneficial owner of that bank account. There's got to be a person tied to it. And I've worked with many clients where we went to the bank and the bank required it be a U.S. based person. So you can't just be living in Vietnam, opening the company here and kind of running it remotely. They want to know somebody's here.
There's some changes in that right now, and a few banks are willing to open business for other foreigners.
I've worked with one that's done that, but I've worked with many that said no. So
yeah, a lot of them say no, but East West Bank.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I have friends works at East West Bank. They're starting to do that for foreigners.
Okay.
They can even open an account virtually.
Okay.
So it's changing, but yes, you could get more. What do you call that? Obstacle.
Right.
But, when people say no, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Keep knocking.
Exactly. Keep on asking different banks to see what they'll do.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So again, going back to which entity to choose, do you have an advice? It depends on the industry or the purpose or the goal, where you want to go, or the tax incentive. When you advise your clients, when they ask you?
I don't give any particular one. The only one where I will give a recommendation is if they're in the tech space. Then they're going to probably want to stay as a corporation. Because once they get outside investors coming in, most outside investors want to know that they were set up as a C Corp. So for that particular space industry, then yes, stay as a corporation. But for restaurants, manufacturing, along the business salons, I would just recommend that they can be corporations or limited liability companies. There's really not a preference that I have. There may be some preferences that their tax advisor may have, which will guide them as to which entity to go through. But in general, I just give them the options of what's available.
As the lawyer, is each one have a different pros and cons, or more protection, like the incorporation has more protection than LLC, or vice versa? There's
not, quote unquote more protection. Once you have the core protections of a properly registered and operating entity, you'll keep it. You lose the protection, but you don't get more. But yeah, there are pros and cons just depending on what that particular issue is. From the biggest one, obviously, the tax standpoint, right? Other ones are how much maintenance is there. We were talking about the annual meeting and so forth, right? The other big thing I think we haven't mentioned, but it's worth mentioning is that when it comes to corporations, there's the shareholder, right? There's the board of directors.
Oh yeah.
And there's the officers.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have that limited liability companies. And a lot of my clients, especially smaller businesses, family businesses, they don't understand the distinction. So when the lawsuits come, they're trying, well, I own the company. Well, it depends on what do you mean by owning it, right? So we know mainly my shareholder, they own stocks in the company, ownership interest in the company. And so one of the considerations I always know, how much do you own? What is the percentage? Are you a majority shareholder, minority, things of that nature? And then so what happens is most time every year or every couple of years, these shareholders will meet and vote for the board of directors. In small business, it's you. A lot of times it's you or brother, cousin, whatever it is, right? Few people. And those board of directors will then appoint the officer, the president, the vice president, treasurer, secretary, right? So that's the way the system works. But the misunderstanding or misconception by many people is, well, I own it, I do whatever I want. Not necessarily. You can't just do whatever you want, right? So that's when I have to break it down. And to give you an easy example, they may own shares in Microsoft and Apple, but that doesn't give them the right to go into Microsoft or Apple's headquarters and say, we are not going to make iPhones, right? Yes, you are an owner, but you don't do whatever you want. So that's a good example where I try to tell people, just because you own it doesn't mean you do whatever you want. So, when looking at the businesses, I tell them, so you're the shareholder, you vote for the board of directors, and that board of directors will then appoint the officers. The officers, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, they run the everyday operation of the company, right? The board of directors only oversees the general direction of the company, making sure that it's doing what its mission and its purpose is.
Do you have to have an odd number for board of directors or officers?
You do not. So the bylaws.
Talking about the bylaw.
Yeah,
bylaw and operating agreement.
Right. So in the corporation's bylaws, right? It's the books that has all the rules, the regulations of what happens in terms of the administration of the company. Okay, what happens if you sell, if there's more shares, board. So that bylaw will have in there within that the booklet the number of designated board of directors. Your question, Trin, is do you need an odd or even or what that number?
Like voting the same, like 2 and 2,
right?
Or 4 and 4 can come to a conclusion, a majority.
Well, so you can set whatever number of board of directors you want. There is a challenge though when it's a even number, because then you could have a split as to what decision to be made. But a lot of times, the person who owns the super majority or majority shares in the company will probably have a lot of influence over how many board of directors there is. Because it comes down to voting, right? So it's going to come down to voting. So you want to keep that in mind. How much do I own the company? Do I want 50%, 51%, 49%? Right, that's important. I've had it where my customers come to me and there's a dispute, but there's a 50-50 ownership split. So there's not one that has more rights or more say than the other.
Hopefully easier for lawsuit.
Right.
Argument.
Easier argument. It's hard. So what I say, in that situation, there's two people that are owning it. Who's going to put more money in? Who's taking on more of the risk? Who's going to run the everyday operation of the company? Maybe King Luda should have the 51, but he had a 49. Right. So there's not a one.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's not a perfect piece of advice I can give them. I said, you got to tell me, what are you guys doing so that we can figure out who should own more. Like that.
Okay. So thank you and Mike so much for sharing all these nuggets with the audience today. And
great. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you.